What is up, everybody? Anthony Cosenzi here from CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Is this show? This is the Happening Headlines program episode that we do weekly, and I am joined by a very special guest. Usually, I said this before we took the air, usually this is, it's fun to do the Happening Headlines, but it's always much more fun when I do it with somebody else, especially someone like my guest, Josh Iles, who is the architect of one of, if not the biggest, Bengals Facebook forum pages on Facebook, as well as Who Dey Nation podcast, all kinds of different stuff. He's out there and doing all kinds of cool stuff with the Bengals. Josh, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, doing well, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah, talking some Bengals. We'll go through some headlines as we normally do, talk about the AFC North and NFL. Thanks for carving out some time. Before we kind of get to the headlines and all the things that we want to get to with the Bengals, I want to remind folks, first of all, that they can get this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Got to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle channel, podcast channel, through your favorite audio streamer, and we are there. Leave us a review if you could. And then beneath Josh on his side of the screen, by that SB Nation logo down there amid the grass, you can click our show logo to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available, all that good stuff. And then, of course, the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, a big page, albeit not as big as the one that Josh has created there on Facebook. And we want to promote that and talk about that before we get to the headlines and whatnot. So let's start with this Facebook page, man. Tell us a little bit about it. This is, and I'll pin this here, this group, so that people can ask for access. You are an admin. You are a creator of this Facebook page, and man alive, 160,000 followers on this thing. So tell us a little bit about it.
We started that group probably 5 years ago. It was me and I think two other guys that were the ones that forefronted starting it. And we were always chasing, trying to just become the largest Bengals group on Facebook, but also maintaining the quality of the group and, making sure it's not overrun by spam, which is a problem on Facebook and all that. So, we started it and over this past season, we were growing a lot and, getting around. I think early in the season we were still approaching 20,000 members, early in the season, and it grew, and throughout the season I think we passed 30 and 40, and then once we got to the playoffs it was 20, 30, 40,000 over the course of a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? It was just over that playoff run that really exploded it, and we're surprised because, we looked around at other Bengals groups and it wasn't like they were also growing to those amounts. So I guess we had something good going on. It's a fun spot to talk. When you have that many people, you get some great conversations and you can have some dumb ones that occur. It's the
random
internet.
Tinfoil hat. Yeah, the random tinfoil hat ones come out every once in a while, but you guys do a good job of kind of maintaining the integrity of the page and, obviously respectful dialogue, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really impressive what you've built there. And then an offshoot and something I think is newer than the Facebook page that you have created. And I was lucky enough to be on this show last week talking some Bengals with you, and that was a lot of fun. This is the YouTube channel here, WDN Today, and I will pin I will pin the links there in the live chats for folks to go and subscribe there. If you don't want to hear me yammer, which I can completely understand, you've got some other stuff going on there. Obviously, kind of with the growth of the Facebook page, this kind of became a necessity and or passion project for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, with the Facebook group being more of a forum, that doesn't necessarily represent my individual content. So I just wanted an avenue where I could still put out Bengals stuff that is coming from me. And started WDN Today. We're on YouTube. I've done 2 podcasts now. You were on number 2 with me last week. But I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And along with just the podcast, I just do general Bengals content so far. Even been making some original Bengals memes that are kind of fun. Did a Joe Burrow, most interesting man in the world, meme last week that went over pretty well. Nice. So, just some fun content for Bengals fans, especially this time of the year.
Well, you do a great job, and I appreciate you being a good soundboard for a lot of different Bengals fans. And what's cool about your Facebook page too is you do a good job of allowing content creators like myself and many others out there to post kind of interviews or different stuff that they have going on there. So we appreciate that very much. And quickly, you mentioned you live in Florida, right?
Yes.
So how did the Bengals fandom come about for you there? Where are you originally from, Ohio, or what's the background?
So I'm from Cincinnati, born and raised. I grew up in Ohio into my 20s, and then until I was 25, I was either in Cincinnati or Kentucky. And then about 5 years ago, moved to Florida. And then actually this year was my first season that I've become a season ticket holder in my whole life, and I still live in Florida. So it's been interesting already trying to map out the season since the schedule releases, but I'm really excited about it.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Let's just kind of get to it. I wanted to do an intro and obviously promote all the great things that you're doing. So we're going to run through some headlines, and I want to get your thoughts on this stuff here. This one, kind of a fun one to start off with. We'll kick it off here, and this is on CincyJungle.com. T. Higgins gives Tyler Boyd a new nickname, Chihuahua. Did you hear about this one? This kind of popped up in.
I briefly heard about it in passing and kind of laughed, but I guess I get where he's coming from, but it's not in any way like some kind of nickname that's going to intimidate anybody.
Yeah, it's via Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com, and this is on both that side and CincyJungle.com. The quote is, "But he's never been a big numbers guy. The guy Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins calls Chihuahua because he's endlessly yapping with high energy, is a dog, pure and simple, and in a locker room these days, that's the highest of compliments." So I guess on the surface, it doesn't seem like the biggest compliment, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's an interesting nickname. I guess once you dig deep into the name, I guess it makes a little more sense. And you go, there's the compliment. I get it now.
Sure, yeah. No, and I get it from a team perspective. It's good to have locker room guys like that bring that extra layer of energy that not everybody is hardwired with on a day-to-day basis. So if you have those guys in your locker room that just increase the levels of whether it's just goofing around or intensity in general in practice reps, it's good to have those guys.
It is, and Boyd obviously has one of the very few holdovers from the Marvin Lewis era, and a guy that has kind of ascended himself both with his on-field play and really his attitude, his demeanor. And, the one thing about Tyler Boyd that really impressed me, and I think that's what's resonated with Zach Taylor and this staff, is his attitude and approach during the really bad years and the early years of Zach Taylor. You look back at 2018, I know that was Marvin Lewis. You look back at that year, you look back at 2019 when things were just all over the place. Obviously, 2020 Burrow's there, but he gets hurt. And just, to me, I think what's really brought him to the forefront in a leadership role is just kind of, he's a guy that through all of that still played the same way, I remember the Miami game. I think that was 2019, where it was kind of the tank bowl, right? Whether you're going to get Tua or Burrow.
I was at that game, actually.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
So you remember how hard he was playing in that game, and that season was just an absolute mess. And you look at that and you go, that's probably where he gained. I mean, he already had a lot of respect in that locker room, but I mean, that game, I think, kind of was like, hey, that he got a lot of respect there for what he did that day.
Yeah, especially in the NFL when you're playing for basically nothing towards the end of a season.
Right. Yeah, that was the one I think he was limping around, and he was charging he was doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's come a long way since you said early on in his career. I even remember the early years. It was like maybe year 2 or 3 with him, where he would be getting like healthy scratches from the active roster, and I'm like, I didn't even know what was going on with the guy, because we saw it from early on that he could be, at least amongst the rotation of wide receivers. So obviously he's gotten his chance and proved to be, over the past few years, one of the better slots in the league.
Yeah, most definitely, and a key component to what the Bengals like to do on offense for sure. Let's keep going here. This one, I think we've talked about this maybe before, but The wide receiver rankings includes their top Pro Football Focus's top wide receiver rankings include 3 Bengals. Not too much of a surprise here, but he's rated as the 6th. Jamar Chase rated as the 6th overall wide receiver in the NFL, according to PFF. Higgins makes the same list at number 13 overall. And that's, he actually came ahead of Chris Godwin on that. And Godwin obviously is a very good player. And then you've got Tyler Boyd, who's the highest rated wide receiver 3 on the list at 28th overall. What do you think of these rankings? And too low, too high, just right? What are you thinking?
I think it's a mix. I love the respect given to Tyler Boyd getting in there as you said the highest ranked wide receiver number 3. Because like I mentioned about him being one of the best slots over the past few years, you can statistically break that down where he is very easily argued the best slot. So them giving him credit there. I love T at 13. I think Chase is a little low. I think he should be, in the top 5. Like, he's, I think they're just not putting him up there yet because he doesn't have the resume for it yet. It's just one season, and you never know. But we watched all those games, and as long as he's healthy and out there, and Joe's healthy and out there, it's going to be hard to match up to his stats. Obviously, you got a guy like Kupp that's going to have the pure volume that's 1.5 times of what Chase is getting. But I don't know. I think Chase is unreal. I've watched the Bengals for close to 20 years now, and some of the things he does is unlike anything I've really watched from a football standpoint. And I'm not trying to be like dramatic saying that.
Yeah, no, that's most definitely. And then you look at Higgins now starting to get quite a bit of run, number 13 overall on the list. And when you're technically a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, coming in at 13 overall on this list is pretty impressive. So, he has of course, a little bit more of a resume over Chase, just having that extra year there and obviously working with backup quarterbacks towards the end of his rookie year. But, that's an impressive designation for Higgins going into year 3 here.
Absolutely. I think I'd love to go through the 32 teams and just look at wide receiver 1s and see how many teams he would be the wide receiver 1 for. I wouldn't be surprised if it was almost half.
Yeah. So Bengals getting a lot of run and getting a lot of respect in the wide receiver PFF rankings. Now, they brought in a new guard this offseason in Alex Kappa to really shore up the offensive line. Ted Karras, obviously Cordell Volson, and Lael Collins all brought in this offseason to shore things up here. It wasn't just the wide receivers that PFF had been ranking of late. They have ranked guards. And where do you think Alex Kappa lands? He is here in tier 4, which is known as solid starters. And you see some of the names here, and I'd be curious to see how you feel about this. Trey Smith, who had a good year with the Chiefs, Connor Williams, a guy that some people thought would be a target of the Bengals this offseason, who just went over to Miami along with Teron Armstead. You had Cody Whitehair, Matt Filer, who that was a guy I thought would be a good fit for the Bengals last offseason when he went to LA and joined the Chargers. You got Daniels, who another potential target for the Bengals, went to the Steelers and has been showing some nice things at OTAs and whatnot there. So some of the names there you see Corbett Saffold, a little bit on the older end of things there. And Elijah Vera Tucker, a first-round pick from a couple years ago with the Jets. But what do you think of the company there? Kappa is keeping in that designation of being a quote-unquote solid starter in Tier 4 of PFF rankings.
I like it. When you read it on paper and, just with the quote of solid starter, if you're calling this guy a solid starter compared to what was there last year, we can do a lot with that. I've seen, with this joking about Facebook threads and how people can have some silly takes. People talking about Joe Burrow is going to get sacked only less than 10 times or this and that. But if Joe Burrow gets sacked 40 times next year, that's a huge improvement from the prior season, which I don't even think he'll get sacked 40 times. But regardless, I love the Kappa upgrade. We've obviously, I think, widely improved across the line when you just break down the grades and what these guys have done in the NFL. we've kind of mentioned too, though, we need to stay healthy up front because then it can get a little thin after the first stringers.
It can, and we've got a little bit more on the other guard position, someone vying for that position. You and I talked a bit about that, last week when I was on your show. So a name there, we've got a little bit of news or non-news, I guess, as it goes with someone there. And someone else who is poised to have a big impact on this team he's coming off an injury. He's a guy that the Bengals are going to rely upon, not necessarily as a starter, but as a heavy rotational player, you would think, on defense. And he is starting to show some good things here as he comes back. But the hype, once again, with Joseph Osai, it started last year. He had that amazing preseason game. And then he had kind of like a small injury. Then it was all of a sudden, no, by the way, he needs surgery. And now he's done for the year. But he is back doing a lot of side field work and whatnot. This is on Bengals Wire, a great site that does a lot of great work on the USA Today network here. And right now, Osai was talking to Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic, saying, you got to go take it, talking about his ability to come back and contribute and be a guy that I think we all think he can be based on what he showed in that one preseason game and a little bit of training camp last year. But nothing is going to be handed to me just because people expect things from you. Just because you had a good game, nothing is going to be handed. I still have to go out there and compete. We have a great room full of guys that can rush the passer. Hopefully, I'll do enough, and my coaches and teammates will trust me to have that position. So, again, a little bit of player speak here, Josh, but a guy that I think we can all agree as Bengals fans and those of us covering the team, I think we're all pretty excited about what this guy can bring to the table. And really, when you look at the end of last season, that extra pass rusher off the edge, that extra juice off the edge was missing a little bit because of the high volume of snaps that Hendrickson and Hubbard had to take.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've used this word almost a lot this offseason with versatility, like a Swiss Army knife. But he's a great use for pass rush, just like you said, not only coming in on third down and lining up on the edge, but you can leave your other defensive ends in and put him at outside linebacker to just for a third down rush as well. I believe at Texas he played almost everywhere inside the box. He was playing outside linebacker, inside linebacker, and end. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think if he's healthy, it's a huge addition to our pass rush and our ability to get that defense off the field.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, there's so many things, elements to creating a successful team in the NFL. And one of it, of course, is protecting your passer. And the other, of course, is getting to the other team's passer. It's an old cliched saying, but I mean, it really rings true. And when you look at, quite honestly, how the Bengals season ended, how the Super Bowl played out, I mean, that cliche really rang true in the fact that, Burrow didn't have the protection that we all would have hoped, and it ended up at the end kind of biting him in the butt, so to speak. And, they had opportunities to take that game. But, I mean, again, if you're able to get to the passer, if you're able to protect the passer, those are two keys. And as even if you've got settled starters like the Bengals have at their edge positions, having another guy and spelling guys or being able to kind of mix up looks up front, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere in the NFL, depth is always a thing you want.
Yeah, most
definitely. And I was actually at that preseason game last year where he got the sack on Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's right. That was down your neck of the woods as well. Yeah, there were a couple of performances by some backup edge rushers in the preseason last year. Osai in that game, he was an animal. And I can't remember which game it specifically was, but Khalid Kareem, I think it might have been that same game or maybe against Miami. I can't really remember, but there was another game where Khalid Kareem in the opening series had, two pressures and a sack or something like that, or a pressure and a sack. And I don't
think it was that one because they got out of that drive really quick after the Osai sack.
Yeah. I think it was later on after Osai was lost, and then Khalid Kareem was in there. I think it might have been preseason game number 3, but it was pretty impressive that some of those backup guys were playing well, and hopefully they could build that rotation going forward. I'm Anthony Cosenza. This is the Orange and Black Insiders Happenin headline show. We do this every week where we run through the headlines with the Cincinnati Bengals, the AFC North, and the rest of the NFL. I usually fly solo on this thing. Every once in a while, I have some special guests like today, including Josh Iles, who is the architect, administrator of the biggest Bengals Facebook forum page, Houday Nation, and of course, WDN Today, the podcast that he has created as well, and does a great job covering the Bengals and providing a lot of cool content for Bengals fans. And we're happy to be chatting with him and just kind of shooting the stuff, if you will, about the Bengals going on here as OTAs and whatnot. There are a lot of on-field workouts that have continued, and we'll get to some sights and sounds of those from today specifically. We've got just a rankings heavy, a arbitrary rating type of day on the Happenin headlines here, Josh. Joe Burrow checks in at number 6 in the NFL quarterback rankings. This was based this was over at Pro Football Network ranking this, and here is the breakdown of it. Joe Burrow is already beginning to hit mythical levels of reputation. The Cincinnati Bengals playoff run and Burrow's, quote, style have put some lofty expectations on his future. The team didn't seem like a Super Bowl contender. They finished 12th in offensive DVOA and 24th on defense. And then you can kind of look at some of the other tidbits. Burrow produced the highest CPOE in the league last season. He's an accurate passer who manages the pocket incredibly well. And then, of course, getting Chase was all the Bengals needed to unlock the offense. 6th in the league here. What are you feeling on that one, Josh? Too low on that one for you? Or is this still kind of the Jamar Chase, not too heavy of a resume yet in order to get him in that top 5 or higher?
I think it's pretty fair. I would flip-flop him and Herbert. I think Herbert's had a just better situation. That's just gave him a better stat line for his first 2 years, but he's a great quarterback. I think he's just, they're giving him the nod, not the notch, I can't even find the word, the nudge. They're giving him the nudge just because he's got a bigger arm and he plays in a bigger market. But there's a lot more to it. And I would flip-flop that, but the other ones are totally fair. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, even Josh Allen has a pretty nice resume so far in his early career. Not a Super Bowl berth.
Right.
But it's fair. Joe's played 1.5 seasons, so like 6th best quarterback in the NFL is pretty nice.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm with you on this one too. And I feel like, the whole thing with, as we go back to that 2020 debate, I mean, even if Tua was part of that conversation for some folks, but really it was for a lot of folks, it was Herbert and Burrow, if you're the Bengals, or, picking a top there. And it was, you've got a little bit more of the football IQ, a little bit more accuracy, and the intangibles with Joe Burrow, but you have kind of the size, the big arm, a little more athleticism potentially in Justin Herbert. And, both guys, to their credit, I know it hasn't played out for Herbert on the postseason side of things, but both guys, to their credit, have come in and played really, really well. I think I always have this dream, because I was on the West Coast here. I was a big Justin Herbert guy at the time in college, and I thought he kind of got knocked a little bit unfairly his final year at Oregon there. But, I have this kind of romanticized dream of, down the road, one of the big iconic playoff matchups down the road. Yeah, it could be Mahomes and Burrow. Yeah, it could be Allen and Burrow, but that Herbert Burrow in that same class. Yeah. I kind of force, and then there's some history between the Chargers and the Bengals anyway in the postseason. So, you kind of figure maybe that'll rekindle. I don't know.
Yeah. I like the idea of that, and like almost like a Brady Manning a little bit, similar ages. Yeah. But I think when you look at compare the two, and you're looking at Joe Burrow's scouting report, and you're giving him the edge, you say, IT. He's got it. He's just got it. You know what I mean? We watched Andy Dalton for a decade, and I love and appreciate what Andy Dalton did for us, but he did not have the it factor. Just, I think even the difference between Joe and Herbert is Herbert's extremely talented. He would have came into Cincinnati and put up nice numbers and been a really good player for us. But I don't know if he would have changed the culture as quickly as the combination of Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor and this group has. The fact that he could come in and within a couple games into his rookie year, everybody in that locker room already looked to him as the guy. That doesn't really happen in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And actually, I already clicked out of the screen there, but if you go back and look at the reasoning of why Pro Football Network kind of had him maybe a little bit lower than a Herbert or others, they talked about DVOA and, they were 12th on offense or what have you. But yet, like you said, it's exactly like you said, the it factor, because the sentence on that was they didn't look like Super Bowl contenders, yet somehow, some way, this team surprised everybody, and it was on the right arm of Joe Burrow largely. I mean, the defense played above expectations, I think, and some other elements really came together. Joe Mixon had a career year, obviously, Jamar Chase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at it, it's like, I think that's why some people are saying, oh, what a fluke, what a fluke. Well, I know I hate that, but the thing with it is, like you said, he's got it. And so even when things don't look the prettiest, even when it doesn't seem like this team is going to go as far as it potentially could, there's Burrow kind of dragging everybody along. And that kind of plays to what you're talking about there.
Yeah, some of those plays he was making in the second half of that Kansas City game were just extremely definitive of that. That third down conversion where he broke out of those sacks from Chris Jones, spun out, and just extends the ball across. It was it was a play that was just unbelievable that he almost made look casual. It's crazy.
Routine, right?
No, he just throws a couple all-pro 300-pound linemen off of him and spins out and runs 10 yards for the first down, and a huge moment in the game.
Yeah, and that's kind of when you knew too. Even when they were down in that game, you kind of knew that something special was going to happen when he was making plays like that, just kind of scrapping away, even when things weren't going totally their way at certain times in that game. But and
that's what those guys do.
That's right. And it must be Tyler Boyd Day on the show because we're talking a lot of Tyler Boyd. But this is an article from a few days ago from Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com. And only Mr. Hobson, we got to get him back on this show. I haven't had him on in a long time, but I love the guy. Only he could come up with such an awesome nickname, title, Sultan of Slot. Because if you know Josh, he is a big old school baseball guy. I mean, he loves football. He covers the Bengals, but he is a Boston Red Sox guy. He loves East Coast teams, the history of the Yankees and the Red Sox and everything. He's all about that. So when you see the Sultan of Slot, I'm going, that is just vintage Jeff Hobson. I love it. But what's interesting about this, you never really thought about it, because when I started reading this, I go, wow, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting that Tyler Boyd is creeping up the team record books in receiving yards, catches, all that kind of stuff. You never really thought about that. And when last week, John Sheeran and myself had a conversation about who the next few Ring of Honor candidates should be, or who would we be electing in on this next go around. And with 2 spots left, it's really difficult to, go that route. But to narrow it down easily rather. But here you go here. Tyler Boyd now is creeping up on some of these kind of big names in Bengals receiving history, which is a little, I guess I shouldn't say it's surprising, but you just I didn't think of it that way. And now when you're kind of learning about this, you go, oh yeah, he's had some really productive seasons. That's putting him right in the mix.
Yeah. I know that, other than him, the first one that comes to immediate memory you think about is TJ Houshmandzadeh. I'm pretty sure he's right around there with comparable numbers to what Hoosh did in his career with the Bengals, if not past him in a couple spots. I'm pretty sure, but I'm spitting off the top of my head there. But yeah, he's just been extremely consistent since he's been in the rotation as our slot guy for almost 5 years now. If I'm a fan of the guy. I hope he stays with us beyond his next contract or this contract.
Yeah, it's came to the team in 2016, but like you said, was kind of the more regular slot guy the past really 4-5 years, I guess. And so you see here, he's patiently slithering and creating through the crevices left by the greats to leverage his own legacy. By the time October arrives, he should be the 7th Bengals wide receiver and 2nd youngest to 400 career catches, since he needs only a dozen. And by the time of November's bye, Boyd, in his calendar reliable hand, should have wriggled into the top 5 past Ring of Honor candidates, Isaac Curtis, who still does not get the attention that he deserves for what he did. And, I mean, just what he was doing in that generation of football was unbelievable. Chris Collinsworth, as well as feel their way through the decades to become the 9th Bengal receiver to reach 5,000 yards. So, and then Burrow just tacks on, he's one of the best, said Burrow of Boyd. So it's just, you get these reminders and you go, we gotta give proper due to a guy like Tyler Boyd, who has shown that he's productive and consistent.
Well, in the Bengals wide receivers all time might be their deepest position, like in their franchise's history, when you really think about it. So if you're creeping up the all-time list of wide receivers for the Bengals, you're doing something.
Yeah, and then he's still putting up the numbers as the number 3 guy in the passing attack. So pretty impressive. Right. We'll keep it rolling here. This is from the great crew over at All Bengals, and Nicole Zembrodt recently sat down with a good friend of our show as well, Mr. Ken Anderson, former NFL MVP, Super Bowl quarterback for the Bengals. And Ken Anderson believes that the Bengals could be much improved following offseason additions is the headline there. And Nicole had a great interview, sit down with him for, I believe it was about 15 minutes or so, maybe even longer. I caught part of it, did not get all of it so far, but a really fun interview. And, there's some quotes here. The Bengals could be better this year than last year because of addressing the offensive line, Ken Anderson told them at All Bengals. Joe's going to have more time to throw. I think having more time and not getting the hits, there will be drives that will be extended because they're not in 3rd and long situations. We'll see an offense now that could be successful running the football. Therefore, your play action is better. It takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback, a guy who would know something about playing quarterback at a high level in the NFL, Mr. Ken Anderson. So I don't know if you caught the interview here, Josh, but some interesting tidbits in it. And Ken Anderson, always a great ambassador for the Bengals. And of course, we can't say it enough. Go support the Ken Anderson Alliance and the great work that his foundation does by donating or getting involved how you can. But last year when we had Ken on our show, Josh, he was, maybe a bit more optimistic than John and I were. We thought the Bengals would be competitive. Mm-hmm. I think we had him on at 2 separate occasions. One was shortly after the season ended in the January, February months before the draft. And then we had him on again in the summer with the Ring of Honor kickoff and all of that stuff. And so as we got him in summer, we were like, oh yeah, we're feeling you now a little bit. But early, he was really on the Bengals saying, I really feel that 2021 is going to be a really good season. And now he's, in speaking with All Bengals, has built upon that and saying they could be even better than they were last year.
Yeah, I think with the quote talking about this year, he really hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of us are feeling that from the offseason additions. But to even jump back to like last season, last season I felt we were going to make a jump. I didn't think we were going to make a Super Bowl run by any means.
That's how I felt, yeah.
Yeah, like I felt like people were sleeping on us. I really did. Because if you go back to the 2020 season and watch that game, that season through, when Joe was playing, we're in every game, and there was a handful of games that we could have swung either way. And they say that about the NFL all the time, but we were a few field goals away from a 500 or better record the season before. And if Joe doesn't get hurt, we might have still done that. So people being surprised that we went from, like 4 or 5 wins to 11 wins, or 10 wins. I mean, I don't think they were watching close enough, honestly. But then that being said, you jump to this season, we go to the Super Bowl with scraps at the offensive line, and no disrespect to those guys, but their grades kind of show that. They just weren't – it wasn't a good year. And they were in the Super Bowl. We addressed that situation and got above average players at every spot that we needed to on the offensive line. And majorly brought back the roster that went to the Super Bowl. The people that are saying we were a fluke last year, I think just aren't paying enough close attention.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And, it's not just a blanket statement that Ken made apparently there. It's nuanced in terms of how drives could be extended just simply because of improved offensive line play. And then you look at what the Bengals, my big thing with it is the Bengals were explosive on offense for much of last year. There were some dry spells, some peaks and valleys and all kinds of different things. But where I really saw some trouble and where it was a little surprising in some ways that they made a Super Bowl run was the red zone issues and the inability to get in the end zone in the postseason, not in the regular season, but in the postseason. They were just not getting in the end zone very regularly, and they were relying on big kicks from Evan McPherson. So while Ken Anderson in this interview talked about how drives could be extended and those turn into field goals instead of potentially punts, I would even take that a step further based on how I have felt with the offensive line improvements in that field goal drives or long field goal tries by Evan McPherson, in which he was highly successful at last year. Now those become more makeable touchdown opportunities because of improved offensive line play. And so at that point, if you're talking about, number one, a stacked AFC and trying to get through that, both in your division and in the conference, and then, of course, returning to the Super Bowl and winning it, that's a big key to that formula. And I feel like they've improved upon that.
Absolutely. And then on the back end of that, extending drives and maybe getting more points out of drives, you're only helping your defense out. Yep. And you're only giving them an easier slate to work with, more rest on the sideline so they can go out for the next series. I think it's a win-win. You have these analysts across big media with like Keyshawn Johnson recently and a few different people that just they think that now that the rest of the AFC North is healthy, that suddenly we won't be able to keep up. But I get it. We have a stigma that this franchise created nationally. Time to just do it again,
Yeah, they're saying time's running out on the Cinderella story, but we'll see what happens here.
Which is silly because we're actually a year ahead of the Cinderella story, honestly.
Right. That's exactly right. I know you love talking about this topic. You mentioned, on your podcast, you're like, man, I feel like we need a respite from talking about Jesse Bates here. But there is a little bit of an update here. This is from Chris Rolling over at Bengals Wire. From a couple of days ago, and the headline, Jesse Bates Bengals standoff continues as another franchise tag at domino falls. And so that is what's being referenced is the David Njoku contract. He got a big deal with the Browns. And to me, that was, if you followed, I know he's not the biggest name in the league, but if you followed David Njoku and his relationship with the Browns, this was really unexpected because there was a franchise tag, and there was he's going to be traded. Might he be cut? And now all of a sudden he gets this mega deal with the Browns to stick with him. It's been just a weird relationship between the two parties there. But regardless, that is just, another kind of piece to the puzzle of franchise tag guys getting long-term contracts. And here sits Jesse Bates still at odds with the franchise, in terms of getting a long-term deal there. I don't know if you kind of connected the dots or not with this specific example, but it still is something that continues to bear repeating in some ways without any updates that are positive at this point.
Yeah. I don't know the full details on what his deal was that he signed. Do you know the money with it?
I think it was either 3 or 4. I have to go back and look. 3 or 4 years, and it was a lot of money. And then you can see here, as Chris notes, he caught 36 passes last year, and he got a mega million, multi-million dollar deal, multi-year deal. And I think he had one 100-yard game in I think it was his entire career, and that was last season.
And he's known for drops as well.
A little bit, but he's highly athletic, and he is when he's on, he's a good player. When he's integrated into the offense, he's a good player. But you can see the numbers do not really add up to the contractual numbers. So
production.
And so then I think really what Chris is trying to, and I don't want to speak for him here, but what he's trying to convey is, maybe a player that in the eyes of a lot this is a stretch and an overpay for a player like David Njoku by the
Mm-hmm.
Browns. And then you've got a player who has a second team All-Pro designation in his very recent resume, and Jesse Bates, and he can't get the deal that he's seeking, even though he may be a player who, in a lot of eyes, may be a little bit more deserving of one than
Mm-hmm.
a guy like David Njoku.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the way the Bates thing is going to go is he's either like we're either just going to move on and not pay him the amount that he's trying to get, because historically the Bengals just do not like to pay safeties large contracts. I kind of understand it from a cap standpoint, but at the same time, I think the only way you really see Jesse back with us is maybe if he pulls something like the TJ Watt move, and is just like, hey, thanks for the help, talking to his agent, but I'm going to take this deal,
Right?
Because I think the Bengals are just going to stand their ground. They're not. I don't think there's any way that he gets in the 17 to 18 million range per season, or close to 50 million guaranteed. I just don't think the Bengals want to do that with a safety with the contracts they have coming up.
Yeah, here's Dan giving us the research. I should have had the number in my back pocket there. I knew it was in that range. Yeah, I didn't have the exact numbers. I knew it was a 3 or 4 year deal, and
so he probably got at least 25 or 30 guaranteed.
Yep. And a player again whose numbers don't necessarily predicate that, but at any rate, that's just something again to watch now with the Jesse Bates saga that continues with the Bengals. Yeah. We're going to kind of breeze through these next few for the sake of time, and kind of close up a little bit of some Bengals talk and transition into some quick things with the AFC North and the NFL. Before we do, want to remind folks that we are joined by Josh Iles of WDN Today and the Houday Nation Facebook page, and all of its glory of 160,000 subscribers to that page. So we'll pin those again before we get out of here, so you can go like that Facebook page and go subscribe to his YouTube channel where he has the WDN Today podcast. Happy to be joined by Josh, and I was pleased to be on your show last week. Before we do, here's just kind of some sights and sounds in case you missed it on Twitter, from some of the bigwigs who cover the team. On the media front, this is from Joe Daneman of Fox 19. Just a little bit of Burrow to Chase here video. We'll play it on loop a couple times. Nice little play there. Looks like a beautiful day in Cincinnati as well. Probably starting to warm up quite a bit.
Reminds me of that KC catch for 72.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Where he just burned everybody across. Yep. That is actually an astute observation. Yeah,
it's like the same scene.
Yeah, very, very similar there. So we'll move on to Mike Petralia, friend of our program, great guy at Trags or TRAGS on Twitter. We will play this one for you. This is Burrow and Boyd getting some work in on-field workouts, OTAs here. And what's cool about this, as we know, Josh, this was not the case last year. Burrow, the intensity level was not the case last year. Obviously, he was taking it easy with the knee and all kinds of stuff. So then you've got the, potentially, I don't know if you want to call it light years ahead, but you've got the Bengals being ahead of the game with Burrow getting more on-field workouts and more intense workouts at this point in the summer as opposed to last year, which is nice. And that's a great catch by Boyd there. You like that. So, at any rate, that's a couple there. We've got one more from Paul Dehner Jr., who does an excellent job as well covering the Bengals. This is kind of plays into my point here. And I don't know if you saw this one, Josh, but Burrow was staying after practice and doing some extra sprints. And then he said he doesn't do it after every session, but sometimes. And I guess he was wearing something where they were kind of monitoring that. But again, when you talk about Burrow last season at this point, in terms of his knee and whatnot and where he's at right now, we'll do one more quick one here as he goes. He was brace and all last year, right? And kind of, oh gosh, let's take it easy.
Hey, it's looking good though.
Yeah. No brace obviously running there. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how Burrow out there in practice had a brace on his knee, and it's unknown whether or not he was going to be wearing that. He kind of is undecided if he's going to wear that again during the season. I kind of would think he probably will, but
I think he will.
Know. Yeah, there were a couple times where I'm like, oh gosh, some of the hits he took, I was like, oh, that looked pretty ugly. So
right, and that's the thing is, it's not even necessarily for protecting him while he's running around, but just if he takes a hit, and it's just having that there just as an extra support system.
Keep things intact.
Yeah, just leave it there.
Lastly, and not to end on a sour note with the Bengals side of things, there is a little bit more in the NFL stuff that includes Bengals players. But if you listen to our show last Wednesday night, John, Sharon, and myself, and of course, why wouldn't you have listened? But if you listened to our show last week, we kind of asked the question at the end of the show, or John asked the question at the end of the show, why the media, Jackson Carman finally had one of his first open media sessions after a practice last week. And, it wasn't really asked about this elephant in the room story that has been sitting out there that broke about a month or so ago now from the site Defector. And Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic noted on Twitter here that Jackson Carman, he was asked about it. Apparently, I guess it was today on Tuesday, he was asked about it. And he had no comment. He declined to comment, according to what Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic says here. So it's I don't know if it's good or not that he was asked about it, but at least the media has, I guess, reached out to him about that, and he has not commented on it. I can tell you, Josh, I've I relayed a little bit of a story, just a little peek behind the curtain. When I was first with Cincy Jungle, when I first joined, I had an interview opportunity with Dre Kirkpatrick when he was, I think he was a rookie or his second year or what have you, but he was battling injuries at the time. Before I kind of recorded or took down answers of what he was saying, they kind of said, don't ask him about his injury status at this point, because it was in season and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes folks prompt you about what you can or cannot ask. But, these are open media sessions. So apparently they asked him about it and he declined to comment.
Yeah. There's a lot of different reasons, I guess, for that. Obviously preventing certain legalities or whatever that might be going on. But I also kind of look at it from if you just want to observe it from like just looking at the team and the social media and what Joe Burrow posts. And if this was something I feel that was very serious, we might be losing Jackson Carman to suspension or something of that sort. You wouldn't see them posting Jackson Carman like they do. Joe Burrow putting him on his bodyguards post and tagging him in it amongst the starters, which they're having him at left guard number one. What I've seen in OTAs, I don't think that that's how they would be going about it if they thought this guy was going to be in some kind of trouble moving forward.
Yeah, and then it seems that there are very few other outlets
right,
also reporting it. I'm not saying this that means anything or doesn't mean anything. Sure. It's just there's one major outlet that has published this story, and that's kind of been it to this point. Apparently some teams knew about this, though, it sounded like, in the draft process. So again, it's just kind of, I think we're all in a wait and see situation, and Carman has just decided to not comment on it at this time and kind of let things play out. So I think we'll all have to kind of be on a wait and see thing. But, as of last week, we had thought that he was not asked about it. And then now, according to Paul Dehner Jr., was asked about it and has declined to comment. So,
yeah. And who knows what the truth is of the situation, but to me, just the timing feels a little odd of when it came up. But, sometimes in those kind of things, just it doesn't always, you don't always have people come forth or bring it up again until years later. So, I hope it works out for everybody the best,
Yeah. Are you all right on time, Josh? You need to get scooting. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm off today, so no worries.
Okay. All right. We'll kind of start coming to a close here and moving through some things a little bit quicker as we go through the AFC North. Definitely not going to share as many articles on the other teams there as we do with the Bengals, because obviously this is Bengals centric. But let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They signed Miles Jack, a talented linebacker from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Miles Jack. I won't go into too much detail here, but you can see the article from Behind the Steel Curtain, which is the SB Nation Pittsburgh Steelers kind of blog, similar to Cincy Jungle there. They write up a lot of good stuff there, but Miles Jack attributes culture as the biggest difference with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's interesting there. Miles Jack made that move, and in season last year, the other linebacker's name escapes me that the Bengals pursued in free agency a couple of years ago. Jaguars paid a ton for him and then traded him off to Pittsburgh. And at any rate, as we know, we can say whatever we want about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how whatever. We cannot deny the culture and the fact that they are a winning franchise, though that winning usually comes in spurts, whatever you want to call it. They are a flagship NFL franchise, like it or not, and I'm sure you can agree, and Miles Jack definitely seems to agree.
Yeah, and I just thought about this, that it's a common denominator for me over the years with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the St. Louis Cardinals, being a Reds fan as well, that I hate these teams. I hate these franchises. But I got a lot of respect for what they do. And every time I see them draft a guy or pick up a guy, in the back of my mind, the reason that I hate it and dislike the move is because I know of how good of a move it is, and like how nice of a fit that guy is going to, like go in there and join the culture they have, and he's only going to blossom. You have a guy like Miles Jack who has been a stud in Jacksonville. It wouldn't surprise me if he just absolutely blooms in Pittsburgh as well. And I hate that, but but it's the same thing when you look at the Cardinals. I think over the years you had examples. I don't know if you're a baseball guy, but like they picked up Matt Holliday, who was on the A's and Rockies, and just kind of underappreciated. And he went there and practically had a Hall of Fame career. And I just knew when he was one of those guys. Man, hate that because that's a good move.
Matt Holliday, man, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time, but definitely a high quality baseball player. Quote, I had been in Jacksonville for 6 years, Miles Jack said, so I didn't know any other organization. I didn't know any other way. So coming here, it's a new culture, new everything, but it's been better for me. And he added, I enjoy coming to work every day. It's been great. So the uncomfortableness is just more learning a new scheme, getting acclimated, figuring out a new city, moving, all that type of stuff. So it's been fun. It's been great. It's the culture. That's what people always say. But coming from where I came and coming here, you see why this team is successful. That's a rough remark if you're a Jags fan. Ooh.
Yeah, but it makes so much sense. Like it is a very dramatic jump, especially when you think about not only the Jags, but the Jags run by Urban Meyer most of the last year. And we know how much of a train wreck that kind of was. Sadly, that did not go well. So I can only imagine going from that locker room where you had all those kind of issues and drama and lack of organization, and then you go to Mike Tomlin in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who he's got 2 Super Bowl rings and all the history of this franchise, and then you've got all these top players in that locker room. It's a big shift.
Yeah, and you go from talking, who was it, Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, right? And now to Omar Khan, who has been tabbed the new GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is on Steelers.com here. Continuity with some change is the title from Bob Labriola, talking about the onboarding of Omar Khan here, going to be the new general manager. And obviously we picked a guy we know very well. Here's the article. I'll pin that in the live chats for folks. But here's the thing that I think says a lot here. And when you go back, I remember quotes years ago from Mike Brown saying, as much as the rivalry is there, he admires what the Steelers are, what they do, how they operate, because of the built-in loyalty, and that loyalty for them usually reaped a ton of rewards. The continuity, like you mentioned with Mike Tomlin, despite things, never had a losing season in his time there. Think about that. Never has had a losing record as the Steelers head coach. Obviously sticking with Ben Roethlisberger as long as they did, and they made Super Bowls and all kinds of different things. So continuity there has worked out quite a bit for the Steelers. The Bengals tried to do a lot of the same things and unfortunately didn't work out to the same level in a lot of different respects. But starting to pay off a little bit more now. But that's kind of the tone here, where they went with someone familiar, and that familiarity, loyalty, and continuity is something that they value, and that's something that you hear a lot with the Bengals as well.
Yeah, hopefully they lack continuity moving forward at quarterback.
Yeah. And it seems like they might, but so
it's a possibility. They got a bridge Mitchell Trubisky and then tiny hands Kenny Pickett. So.
That's right. And I've kind of thought, and by the way, go read this. It's a good read, just kind of learning about the Steelers GM and just getting some quotes there. But I've said this. I think that there's a very strong possibility, or it's a somewhat strong possibility, that the Bengals in their 2 games against the Steelers this year, they may face 2 different quarterbacks in those games. So, depending on how the season goes for those teams, and they may want to rush Pickett onto the field. If they go with Trubisky, maybe even Mason Rudolph gets in there at some point. I don't know.
And our second game with them is after the bye. So,
yep. And that would
be more time to when you transition a quarterback.
Absolutely. Let's quickly go to the Baltimore Ravens here. And Lamar Jackson has not been in attendance at OTAs. There's obviously a lingering long-term contract situation that's headed out there. So I don't see this. I don't see it as a big deal really for them or anything like that. I think it's more just of maybe a slight PR knock against Lamar. Just, you're the franchise quarterback, quote unquote. You want the new deal. You want all this stuff, and you're not at OTAs. In the grand scheme of things, I think we all understand why. It's the same. For a lot of reasons, it's the same reason Jesse Bates is not at OTAs, but it's just different responsibility as the quarterback, I suppose, in this situation.
Yeah, and I get it from a business standpoint, but from the quarterback standpoint, I think the Ravens are kind of switching around their top wide receivers this year, so it would be good to see him getting some snaps with his new guys. But it's OTAs, so I don't hold, like you said, I don't hold a lot of weight with it, but. A quarterback and new wide receivers, I think everybody would like to see them getting snaps together.
You, sir, are the king of the segue, because you talked about new passing options, and here it is right here. Mark Andrews, the Ravens tight ends are going to be scary as
because they'll only be throwing to him.
That's the only guys he's got to throw to.
Yeah.
But a lot has been made a bit about the Ravens transition back to what they were a couple of years ago, which is run, let Lamar run, controlled passing, use those big talented tight ends, occasional big play in the passing game, but really run the football, screen passes, use the athletic running backs, athletic tight ends, and that seems to be how they've rebuilt their team this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good identity for their offense. It's the true identity with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, honestly. In the NFL, you can't try to be something you're not. Lamar Jackson isn't going to lead a spread, throw down the field offense where he's throwing 40, 50 times a game. It only makes sense to run heavy, options, throw into the tight ends, trading away wide receivers that are eventually going to cost you a lot of money. I think it makes sense. Wide receivers, there's a lot of wide receiver talents in the league these days. And I think with how they value it and use it, it's not necessary to keep a guy around that might eventually cost you $20 million a season.
Yeah. And Mark Andrews, one of the best also in his respective position, but going to be interesting. How are you feeling about what the Ravens have done, though, in terms of, with a big knock? Last year was kind of course, the Bengals got them because they were really banged up. And there's some truth to that, of course. Yeah. But I think the Bengals snuck up on a lot of people, and the Bengals are a talented team. So I don't think it's just one thing, right? I think it's a myriad of things. But when you look at the Ravens and what they've done and that they're healthier, do you see them as a much bigger threat this year, or do you see them as kind of the same threat that you saw them last year?
I think if they come into the season more healthy, they are going to be more a threat healthy than they were last year. And, I don't think it was the only reason for them not winning the North and us dominating them, but it was a factor. You can't say it's not. Injuries in the NFL are, they decide a lot. In NFL history, there's a lot of different directions things could have gone if it wasn't for a few injuries on a team. In the offseason, it seems like their moves were kind of reactive to what they needed to counter against what we're doing. It seems like they tried to add a little more depth in their secondary. I still think we're a much better team, though. I think the thing that Anarumo, which is this is crazy, but he kind of like started the exposure of how to stop Lamar Jackson, and you get a guy with enough speed and just spy him the whole game.
Yep.
and they were just
similar to Mahomes too. I mean, similar to Mahomes, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time we were just spying with Jesse Bates, and he was just shadowing him around the field. And if you do that to a guy that's going to have to run 15 times a game and try and make plays on his feet, it changes it a little bit, I think.
Yeah. We are going to move on to the Cleveland Browns here, but I mean, just to your point a little bit, it's kind of cool to see not only the division, but the conference kind of play a little bit of a chess match and play catch up a little bit to what the Bengals have done, how they've built their team and what they did last year. It's kind of cool to see everybody kind of scramble to keep pace with the Bengals. It's pretty refreshing. This is from clevelandbrowns.com. Deshaun Watson, obviously a hot button topic for a variety of reasons, but he apparently via Anthony Poisel of clevelandbrowns.com, Deshaun Watson showing eagerness to forge bonds with new Browns teammates. So a guy who didn't really want to, by all indications, didn't really want to land in Cleveland until they guaranteed him every cent of this contract that he signed with them. He is now kind of embracing his role now with Cleveland. We don't know if there's going to be a forthcoming suspension of any kind or how long, if anything, with all of the allegations and whatnot that are surrounding Deshaun Watson. But he is trying to integrate himself in his new team. And you've got quotes like from Pro Bowl running back Nick Chubb, quote, "He's a great guy to be around. We all love him. He's a very natural leader. He's been at OTAs since they've started. He took us all on a trip." So take that for what you will. I don't like to spend a ton of time talking to Deshaun Watson, Josh, for a variety of reasons, but he is apparently showing some signs of being the leader that they want him to be in Cleveland.
Yeah, and I mean, when you get $230 million guaranteed, I guess it's a nice look to become friends with all your new teammates by taking them on a vacation. There's so many different ways to unpack the Deshaun Watson situation, but it's smart what he's doing. Trying to anchor himself, root himself into that franchise. He's obviously going to be there for a while, or at least we think. So I know the Browns have done a lot of stupid stuff over the course of their existence, but it would have been pretty stupid if they see impending suspension or trouble coming and they gave him all that guaranteed money. I just hope they did their due diligence to offer. Yeah. But we'll see how it plays out. I guess. Yeah. Right. And I guess it's, now coming out as what it seems like obvious news that they're going to maybe release Baker Mayfield or try and trade him. Which was like, I even was surprised to see those reports because it just seems like he's already not been a Brown for over a month.
Right.
Like ever since the Deshaun news broke and he came out and started talking, I almost just already thought he was off the roster.
Very interested to see where Baker lands. Very, very interested. That's for sure. Greg Newsome, talented cornerback. They've got some good defensive backs on this team here. It's a possible slot cornerback role, a benefit to me. This is also from Anthony Poisel on clevelandbrowns.com, but you've got Denzel Ward, whom they locked up long-term, a very good outside boundary corner. You've got Greg Newsome, who I believe was drafted last year. I think they've still got do they still have Greedy Williams on the team too? I mean, they've got a lot of good defensive players that, unfortunately for them, have been hurt the past couple of seasons. I think they had Grant Delpit, who got hurt as well, talented safety out of LSU. So, I mean, they've got some players there, some names, but they're going to try and make things work here. And Newsome is going to play slot corner, and of course, that'll be a matchup to watch with him and Tyler Boyd. Yeah, the Browns are definitely no one to sleep on. I think. If they stay healthy and Deshaun Watson is what they hope him to be, they're gonna be tough. You mentioned Denzel Ward, and I had a nightmare of that 100-yard pick six. Oh God!
I still stand by that game. That game was a blowout, but if that play doesn't happen, the momentum doesn't shift, and it's not the same game. Because we were driving on that and about to put it in the end zone, and it swings 7 points the other way, and just like that, it's an entirely new game.
Yep. And for some reason, the Cincinnati Bengals and Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow have just not figured out ways to beat. Joe hasn't beat him. The Browns. And Zach, in 6 tries, has only got 1 win at the end of that 2019 season, I think, was when that occurred. So, I mean, they got to figure that out, especially this year. They got to be able to get past the Browns, regardless of who's going to be playing quarterback for them when they face off.
I just hope for that Halloween game on Monday Night Football, they give us the sweetest uniform combinations, because you got 2 teams with orange and black colors, orange and black and orange and brown color schemes on Halloween. Like, one of those teams needs to be wearing orange. Like, you need to, like, I digress.
No, it's a funny point. I didn't even really think about that. Yeah. So someone's going to have to wear orange. You may even get the Bengals wearing those alternative white uniforms. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to play that, or one orange, one black. You know what I mean?
Well, I think those white color rushes are retired now.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to also see him bring back the old school pumpkin, the Ken Anderson Bengals.
I wouldn't be mad at that. Like
one game.
Yeah, people are like, "Oh, they look like the Browns uniforms," and it's like, yeah, it's because the same family started both teams.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think those are I think it's really cool when teams like the Packers do that, or then they got those really, really throwback looks. And you just wear it one game out of the year. And I think they just changed the helmet rules recently, which would make it a lot easier of a situation for the Bengals to be able to do that, because before you had the one helmet rule, where they couldn't have alternate helmets, a secondary helmet where it's painted differently and stickers. If you wanted to design a helmet differently, they have to peel all the stickers off the week in between and redesign it. And with the Bengals stripes, you're sending their equipment managers through living hell to redo those every other week.
Yeah. The throwbacks are interesting and unique. I'd really like to see the Bengals do it. Just maybe for the Ring of Honor or something, if it makes sense, or Ring of Honor week, or
that would be really cool in Canton.
Do something like that. But we'll have to see what they do for Halloween there. That's an interesting thought. I didn't really think of that.
Yeah, I was sad that just random side note with that. I was sad that the Halloween game is in Cleveland and not Cincinnati this year.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Ugh. We're gonna go to just a couple of quick NFL pieces of news and then get on out of here. We've gone long, but it's been an awesome show chatting with Josh, and I appreciate his time. Name that's gonna live in infamy in Bengals minds for a really long time, Aaron Donald. But he apparently, via Nick Shook of NFL.com, as of Tuesday, he is, quote, at peace with potential retirement, but wants to recapture the feeling of winning the Super Bowl. Okay. So the quote, I think this is on Brandon Marshall's I Am Athlete podcast. It ain't about the money, but it's a business at the end of the day. That's what you've got to see. For me, it's about winning. I don't want to play football if I can't win anyway. So I feel like if I got a real opportunity to win another Super Bowl, then it makes sense to play. But again, it's still a business. We've got to handle the business side of things. And if that wasn't to get handled, then, it is what it is type of situation. I'll be fine regardless. So it sounds like, it may
contract
be
boys.
Well, that, and it may be retire or Rams. I mean, it doesn't seem like, it's not like I think he's fine with potentially retiring. It could be like a Gronk thing. It could be, to a lesser extent, because he never won a Super Bowl and his team wasn't that successful, but still a guy who kind of retired. A couple guys from this franchise who retired seemingly at the top of their game, Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders, where they just kind of said, hey, I'm just kind of done. My body's still kind of intact and I can go out on a high note, so to speak, whether it's individual performance, team performance, both. And that kind of seems to be where Aaron Donald's head's at here.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it seems like I think this is actually the second time that this story has kind of resurfaced. He talked about it. It was either a little bit before or a little bit after the Super Bowl. I don't remember the exact quotes then, but there was already like vague talks of like, this, he could walk away. Like, it wasn't like he was being definitive, but fact that he's already talked about it a couple times this offseason is kind of interesting. It's clearly on his mind. And with the NFL now, these guys make so much money that you can play 8 years and then walk away with maybe a lot less damage to your body and still live and essentially retire. I mean, a lot of these guys don't go on to retire. They work in a lot of different other avenues and continue to make money. But it's a nice spot to be in compared to 25, 35 years ago, 45 years ago, where these guys had to go after their NFL careers and probably, had to work.
So. That's a good point. This is from Bucky Brooks on NFL.com. His take recently is just talking about CeeDee Lamb. But the thing is down here, the Madden cover, and depending on how you feel about it, this may be a blessing from Bucky Brooks if this ends up coming to fruition here, because the Bengals would have avoided the Madden curse if they go with one of this route. Tom Brady, Trevon Diggs, interesting name there, Josh Allen, TJ Watt, and Cooper Kupp are his 5 that he would like to see make the Madden 23 cover. No Jamar Chase, no Joe Burrow, no T. Higgins, no Joe Mixon, nobody from the Cincinnati Bengals there. Does that rub you the wrong way? Or are you saying, hey, go for it, man, take one of those 5 and let's move on?
Yeah, I'm just about where I'm good with just whatever. I would rather not a Bengal be on there because of the curse isn't 100%, but it's a pretty strong winning percentage. I just would rather not see a Steeler on there. That's all. I buy Madden every year, and the year that Antonio Brown was on the cover, I just bought the game electronically because I didn't want to have the case.
Oh yeah, the Antonio Brown one you said?
Yeah. I was like, I'll just buy this electronically, so I don't have to have a picture of a Steelers player sitting in my, entertainment center.
There you go. I like it. The Bucks are the rich are kind of getting richer here a little bit. They are signing former Bears defensive tackle Akeem Hicks, one of the better available free agents, talented player, and he's essentially, it sounds like he's going to be Ndamukong Suh's replacement in some form there. Suh was with the team for a little while there and had the 1-year deal last year with the team. And to my knowledge, Suh is still out there unsigned. So they went with Akeem Hicks here, and it's a 1-year deal worth up to $10 million. I think that was maybe a name some Bengals fans were thinking as a Larry Ogunjobi replacement or something of that nature. That's a pretty hefty 1-year deal, though. Still, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's just kind of a little bit of NFL news. The Bucks getting a little bit better on defense.
The Bucks, it's the Tom Brady effect. You're going to have talented veterans that are going to want to come in on those kind of deals. I think Hicks, if I'm not mistaken, is a little more versatile than Suh is on a defensive line as far as where he can move around. But you're probably right there. He's probably going to take those snaps. I'm kind of curious, even though Suh's old, he's still going to be a nice little plug-in piece wherever he goes. I'm assuming he's probably just going to sign after camp somewhere, that's a contender and needs a interior guy. It'll be interesting.
See if there's an injury or something, yeah.
Right, yeah, and the Bucks are actually one of the road games I'm going to go to. So
nice.
Yeah, Tom Brady versus Joe Burrow. That's going to be fun.
That should be a good one. Paul Blanton, by the way, with the comment of all comments. I love that.
2K football.
2K football was where it was at. No offense, Madden football, but 2K football. That was, oh man.
Well, and it was a little cheat codish though that the turbo was Mash X. Because if you had a quick thumb, you could outrun anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I loved that game, man. That was it. And then you could create your own team, create your own.
Yeah, I remember the one with T.O. on the front, extending his arm up.
Yeah,
in the Eagles uniform.
Yeah, where he's reaching. Yeah, that was a great one. Love that. I think that was 2K5 that someone else had mentioned there. All right, so we've got just 2 more quick ones, and we are out of here. Kind of one fun one, and unfortunately one sad one. And we don't want to end the show on a sad note, but it's news worth sharing. This is from CBS Sports, ranking the 22 NFL triplets The Chargers get the number 1 spot, just besting out the Bengals, Burrow, Chase, etc. I'm going to scroll down. You see here, there's about 15 listed on here, or 16. Dallas Cowboys are 7. Best of the best. The Rams at 6. The Bucks at 5. You see the Chiefs at 4. Bills at 3. And there's the Bengals at 2. The Chargers at 1. Herbert, Eckler, and Keenan Allen beating out Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase. I don't know what your thoughts are. Eckler's interesting. He's a guy that not a lot of people talk about, but he is a very, very good dual threat player.
He's fantasy running back.
Yeah. Mixon, I mean, a lot of people talk about him as a talented running back, but they don't talk about him as a receiver as much, which is interesting as well. But regardless, you see here very close neck and neck, but the Chargers win out on this arbitrary list of triplets for the year here.
I think it's a little more the media bias, just a little bit. Like I understand the reasoning where they're probably edging Keenan Allen just based on pure resume. And then, like you said, Eckler's a nice dual threat guy where if you're in a PPR fantasy league, that's the guy you want because he can get 8 catches as a running back. But I just with the trio of players we have, and then if you think about like Mixon especially, he hasn't played behind a good offensive line in his NFL career, and I'm pretty sure he has at least like 5,000 plus career rushing yards. He's had like 3 or 4 1,100 plus yard seasons behind garbage lines.
Yep.
Really bad lines where he's there was even a few years back where he led the AFC in rushing, and we had just a not good offensive line.
That's the Alex Redmond, Bobby Hart, all kinds of players that were in front of him there that you go, how I don't even know how he was able to. And then, if we're talking like 2018, what have you, I mean, he's got Jeff Driscoll at quarterback. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how he was even producing. At that
right.
point,
So I think if Joe Mixon is healthy, he has a chance where he's he could flirt with 2,000 all purpose, in a 17 game season. And if he were to play 16 or 17 games, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think last year he was, off the top of my head, at least around like maybe 17 because he had about 1,200 and then 400 plus receiving. But like we said, we've only seen Joe Mixon put up these numbers behind very below average offensive lines, while you have these other teams, including the Chargers, who they have not had a good offensive line for Justin Herbert, but it has been measurably better than the Bengals offensive line has been in the past few years. So just saying that, and maybe a little biased, but I like to try and look at things unbiased. I would give the Bengals the nudge.
Yeah. I mean, it's
close.
Go either way, but I mean, you could go either way with it. But a fun list, and there's a lot of teams on there and a good breakdown there, whether or not you agree with number 1, number 2, how it's ranked on CBS Sports. Sadly, this is one of the last stories we'll have here for you, but a promising player had a little bit of some bumps in his NFL career, but Jeff Gladney, former TCU cornerback rather, and was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. There was an off-field incident that caused him to be released by that team, and then Arizona picked him up. But unfortunately, he died in a car accident early on Monday morning. I think it was at about 2:30 in the morning or whatnot. And another young lady, I think, also lost her life in the car accident. There's all kinds of details that you could see here. The cause of the crash and Gladney's death remain under investigation. So I don't know. There's not a lot of details out there aside from the very, very sad news of loss of life and a former first-round pick by the Vikings of just a couple of years ago, 25 years old, incredibly sad. Our hearts go out to his friends, family, and the organizations that he was with, as well as the TCU, who, obviously he was very well thought of there too. So, unfortunately, another sad off-season story revolving around a young NFL player. Yeah,
it's tough. I always look at these situations, especially involving like car accidents and things of that nature. And it's just like, hindsight's obviously 2020, but I always wonder with these athletes that they make good money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with going out and living your life and experiencing things as long as it's not affecting your job. But with them making good money, I never understood why a lot of these guys just don't have somebody arranged that's going to be giving them rides to and from wherever they're going. Even if it's in the middle of the night, they can make that happen. And again, we don't know the full situation here, and everything is different. But I've always looked at these ones with athletes where they're driving late at night, probably after a night out, and other things can happen. Why they
we
just
don't? Yeah, no, I get you.
And I don't want to allude to right. I don't want to allude to the wrong things with his situation. We don't know what happened. Maybe he was just at his friend's house, but like just driving late at night's not safe in general. Get a cab service. Get your own private driver. That's all I've thought about those same situations.
Yeah, and it's a sad story, and we'll see exactly what more comes of it, but very sad. And Jeff Gladney, unfortunately, dead from a car accident at 25 years old. Very unfortunate, very sad. And he was kind of taking the next step in his career there to see exactly a new team and trying to get things going there. But don't mean to end the show on a sour note on that front, but definitely a headline worthy story. We're going to get out of here. Josh Iles, this is the YouTube channel. Again, WDN Today, a podcast that he runs. I was on this one, which was a lot of fun. He gave me way more time than I gave him, so I feel bad about that. But I am appreciative of your time, Josh. I pinned the link to the YouTube channel there in the live chat. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, and then, of course, I think pretty much everybody that watches this show or listens to this show is also in this Facebook group. I'm going to share. I put the link there in the live chats. The Facebook Who Dey Nation, 160,000 members, 159.9. That is crazy, my friend. Absolutely crazy. You're blowing it up and you're doing awesome things. So thank you for all you do with the content you provide, covering the Cincinnati Bengals, covering the NFL and whatnot. And thanks for your time hanging out with me today, talking some Bengals, talking some headlines. It's great getting your insight, and let's make it a more of a regular occurrence, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I had a great time today. We got an hour and 20 minutes talking on here.
I know. I'm sorry we went long, but it was good.
No,
it was good.
I don't mind at all. I had plenty to talk about. I love bouncing these thoughts back and forth about just Bengals and NFL stuff, and appreciate the shout outs with the pages. Yeah, it's WDN Today on the YouTube, Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. I've even done a few TikToks. Trying to get the hang of that. Just putting out Bengals content.
I don't do that. So I don't do the TikTok stuff. I'm not cool enough to do that. So I don't know how that stuff goes.
Oh, I don't know if I'm cool enough yet either. I'm trying.
Well, thanks for everything. Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming on, and let's get you on again. And anything you got going, whether it's through the page or your podcast or something, and we can help you out with it, let us know, and we'll be happy to do that.
I just right now, I appreciate just liking and subscribing and just joining the action. Got a lot going on Facebook so far because have that stream of the group to post through. But would love to get more subscribers on YouTube to see the podcast.
Awesome. Well, go listen to the man. Go subscribe to that show with the YouTube link that we provided there, and then go check out the Facebook page. You can ingrain yourself with some other passionate Bengals fans and get some discussions going, get all kinds of content on the Facebook page as well. Thanks, everybody. You can get this show on your favorite audio streamers. We are on all the major ones. You got to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. And, of course, you got to also like the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. We have a lot there, but not anywhere close to Josh's page in terms of amount of likes on that Cincy Jungle Facebook page. But we stream there, so go get that. And then, of course, we're on our YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that. We appreciate all of the support. Appreciate your time, Josh, and everybody have a good week. We'll be back at it tomorrow. John Sheeran and myself talking some more Bengals. Take care.